Hey again, it's me, Miss Shawn, and as promised, I'm here to talk about horribly, horribly depressing things with you. So today I'm just going to give just a basic overview of my experiences and my particular experiences. So just bear with me, or if you'll possibly be triggered by any of it, find something happy to watch. I'll be back some other time with next time I'll talk about MSI. How about that? Yeah, I bet you didn't know I like MSI, huh? Anyway, so recently I had one of my friends ask me a pretty damn good question after he heard this story about my past. How in the hell did I ever manage to trust any male ever again? I mean, is it possible for someone who's been through so many traumatic events to ever form healthy relationships? How long does something like that take? And given the fact that I'm not solely or even primarily attracted to men, why bother even giving any of them a chance? When life has literally mathematically proved to me that the men I encounter will likely hurt me, how can I not walk around in constant fear and terror? Well, I think it's time to share some of my story. Kind of a warm-up for the last book in the Cule project that I told you about last time, remember? Yep. Anyway, so it started even before I was 12. I started with, rough bullying. Lots of kids are bullied, from cousins, classmates, neighborhood kids. But when I was 11, that's when the molestation started. Boys younger than me couldn't keep their hands to themselves. And then when I was 12, my mom's boyfriend moved in with his family, some of his family, and it had very disastrous consequences for me in particular. So one of his sons, he was a couple days younger than me, but he was also twice as large. He'd creep into my room every night for about 8 months, over the course of about 8 months, and he would rape me. So my body would clamp down and lock up, never allowing him full access, so to say, but still the damage was done already. But anyway, as soon as he moved out, I told my mother, and she told me there was nothing I could do. So I poured of myself into my books. And then when I was 14, I was put in counseling at school. And then, started feeling a little braver and came out to my mother as a bisexual while we were at the therapist's office together one day. And she told me I was going to hell. So from that point on, I definitely knew I was on my own. So after that, pretty much every man or boy I met, with the exception of the gay ones or the freaks, they seemed to want to fuck me, touch me, or show me their junk. The ones that I could physically flee from, I ran from. I changed schools when I could. I stayed with my family when I could. I didn't go out except on business or with family. I took all those steps, they say are supposed to keep you safe. But, no one can be around you 24/7. And I had health issues, and I wouldn't find out what they actually were until I was about a decade older. And that's all the hunters needed. Some of them didn't even need me to be physically weakened by my illness. I was I was a scrawny ass little kid, They just simply took me by force. The others, they would get me when my illness would debilitate me. I'd literally be unable, I would not have the strength. Well, there you go. Even though fighting back would have still led to them killing me, I'd be literally almost unable to move or lift my hand or anything. I'd be basically physically just completely limp and disabled. So it sucks. It sucks. You already know what my health problems are nowadays. I talk to you about them. Anyway, there were a few sneaky ones who would try to befriend me first and then trap me. Basically, that would just I'd get rid of them, or I'd get away from them, as soon as I could. I never encountered them more than once or twice, once I knew what they really wanted. So it didn't matter where I was or what I was doing. I could be at home, I could be at school, I could be walking to the fucking store, and I'd be hit on, I'd be touched, and I'd be raped. And it didn't usually come from my friends. That's the really disturbing thing. It wasn't my original family doing it to me. It wasn't uncles or aunts or anything like that. I wasn't going to parties or bars and getting drunk. I mean, I was a little young for bars, but even still, I didn't go out. I wasn't in any abusive relationships or any kind of relationship with these people that just fucking attacked me. I usually wore boys' clothes. I didn't dress sexy. Boys' clothes were more comfortable, and they kind of figured would cover up the goods, but it didn't matter. I was just simply in the wrong place at the wrong time all the damn time. And this is just because I didn't live in a safe environment. The people around me weren't healthy. And even though I managed to escape the majority of the people who wanted to do me harm, I couldn't stop all of them. I'm one person. And these were all situations in which saying no or fighting were pointless and meaningless, because no meant nothing to these men and to these boys, because they could hold me down, beat, or kill me. And because they didn't want my consent in the first place, they didn't care about it. That's not this, it wasn't, it's not that gray area that people like to talk about, even though that's important too. But the point was, I wasn't human to them, so there was no reason to ask for my consent. But unlike most victims, not victims. Unlike most survivors, I never thought it was my fault. Although I knew I made a pretty easy target for them for factors that I couldn't control. I'm a woman. I was a young woman, supposedly fertile, and African American at that. In a horrible city where people are, not very well educated, and where, well, especially about things like sex and consent and stuff. I knew that I wanted and deserved better, and I went out and I got it whenever my circumstances allowed. So it was kind of weird. There was this, this kind of dual experience there of having absolutely no control over what was happening to me, but yet still carrying on these healthy relationships when I actually had a choice. So, my friendships and my actual relationships were, they were good, they were wonderful. But these other experiences, they were like just these horrible interruptions. So it was really really bizarre, trying to reconcile that. So that's kind of why, you can kind of see it in a lot of my stories. The horrible and the wonderful kind of happen all together. So anyway, at age 15, I went out and I found an older, experienced, and attractive man to give me my first voluntary sexual experience. I wasn't in love with him. I didn't want a relationship with him. I needed an experience that wasn't terrible and forced, to remind myself that not all people sucked, that not all men sucked. And, it was awesome. He was gentle and kind, and, I enjoyed myself. But of course, because he was over 18, it was statutory rape. So my mom pressed charges against him, because obviously I was too young to know what the hell I wanted or what I was doing, right? My mom pressed charges against the one man I actually wanted to be with. The woman who wouldn't press charges against the men and boys. There was actually one woman later on, who actually did rape and hurt me. And that's our society. This is the world we live in. Weirdly, yeah. So by the time that I actually found out that I could have pressed charges against, the first guy that raped me. I mean, I couldn't really find the others to press charges against them. I didn't even know most of their names. My statute of limitations was up. And, by that time I'd already seen how little the law actually helped survivors, especially of my color. It wouldn't have saved my mind anyways. So no, only I was in charge of how I let this shit affect me. So I wrote about decent human beings. I wrote about rape. I wrote about all the things that I didn't have room to explore in the real world. I wrote about the things I couldn't understand. I wrote about consent and trust. I befriended the outcast. That's actually something wonderful that I'll talk about some other time. I had many boyfriends, a couple of girlfriends. Some I had sex with and some I didn't. And not a single one of them raped me. So it's not like I was a poor judge of character or anything. When I was about 16, I met a boy my age, and he was the first one to tell me I could be happy. He'd lost his girlfriend to cancer a few years before we'd met. He and I never had sex, and our relationship was fantastic. We didn't need to have sex. I mean, even though we wanted to, but yeah. We lived pretty far apart. So it just, when we graduated, we parted ways, and it was cool. And then I met the partner that I'm still with today. And then I re-met the man who turned out to be my other long-term partner, who actually died last year. He'd been a friend of mine in high school. I moved away from the neighborhoods where I'd met most of the perverts. I spent my time how I wanted to spend it, and I stayed home most of the time because I was actually safe there. I chose who I let into the house, and then I found people who actually wanted to hear most of my story. Strange men still bothered me on the internet. Plenty of guys I'd gone to school with, wanted to fuck me or wanted me to send them pictures and shit, so just blocked the shit out of people for years. And then there was this guy who had never been my friend. He was one of my stalkers. I had a couple. They followed me around for years, trying to make me his wife, trying to get me to travel to someplace far off to see him, trying to have me bring my sister along for the fun. He tried to rape me too on a couple of occasions. And I kept moving until I was sure he couldn't find me, and blocked him on all media. And thank God that he moved out of state, far away from me as well. I have spent my entire life pruning the weeds, and I happened to grow up in a place where there were many, just all over the fucking place. But there were also flowers, and that's who I focused on. The freaks, the geeks, the queer, the strange, the forgotten. They were my kin, and we reminded each other that one day we'd be free to be ourselves. We didn't hide or lie to be accepted by, the popular crowd of the masses. We didn't want to be killed. We didn't and, couldn't fit in. And others tried to make us pay for it in various ways, when they found out or when they noticed. Many of my friends growing up were male. To this day, I still get along with, or I actually have more in common with men than with women. Which might seem a little odd, but, going back to that PCOS thing and higher testosterone, and it kind of makes sense. Anyway, but, why trust these men? Why trust anyone at all? It's because my problem was never broken trust, except with my mom. That's definitely another story. She's not completely terrible. Just dropped the ball in some serious ways, in a lot of ways. But it's whatever. But I was never betrayed by those who violated my boundaries, because I never trusted them to begin with. And though I did have to retrain my body's responses, and rewire my hypersensitivity, so that I could be physically intimate without being triggered. I'd never had much trouble being open and vulnerable and honest with those who were that way with me. I became friends with those who exhibited these traits from the start, and I quickly rid myself of those who didn't. But the most important thing is that I trusted and still trust myself first, to survive, to get me out, to judge, and to go on. So that's it. And one day I'll write it all down, if I can even remember half of it. So yeah, next time, MSI.